G'day guys, how you going? Hope you're all having a fantastic morning or whatever time it is in your part of the world. Today I'm going to finish up my old versus new horror series. I don't have a lot of time in the next few days, so I thought I'd end it sooner rather than later. I didn't want to drag it out. I felt that I dragged out the Around the World horror series just a little bit too much. So while I've got the opportunity, I'm going to finish off the series today. The first two films that I reviewed were I Spit in Your Grave and The Last House on the Left, so I hope you've enjoyed them, and I hope that this video that's going to conclude the series is just as interesting. Once again, this is a Wes Craven film. Now, Wes Craven also directed The Last House on the Left. This was after The Last House on the Left, and it's a much different film from the first two films that I've reviewed, so it won't have that really disturbing subject matter, but it's still a disturbing movie on its own. This is more of a traditional sort of horror film. Now, the film I'm talking about, as I said, 1977, Wes Craven directed the original, and in 2006, Alexander Aja, who is a very good French director, directed the remake. And the film I'm talking about is The Hills of Eyes. Now, this is the Australian 2-disc release. It only cost me $3. And then I've got the Anchor Bay, I think this is the UK release. I won this on a contest from Dyslexic Nick, so it was really cool. It comes in a slipcase and it's 2-disc. So it's awesome to have two different types of the two different editions of the original, which is considered as a classic. And then I also own the remake, which is Alexander Aja in 2006. So now I'll be comparing the two. So the story for the original, which is very similar to the remake, I think the remake and the original in this film stay the truest. There aren't many turns from the original storyline, so the synopsis for the original will do for the synopsis of the remake. So the story is as follows. A suburban all-American family are on their way to California when a broken axle leaves them stranded in a remote and inhospitable desert. But they are not alone. Watching them from the hills is a family of vicious, marauding, inbred cannibals with their hunger for human flesh. In the nightmare that follows, the line between civilization and barbarism quickly disintegrates as the wholesome middle-class family fight to survive an onslaught which begins at sunset and lasts through a freezing desert night into the next morning. So basically what we have is a family that are traveling through the desert and they break down, and they're in this area that was subjected to radiation nuclear tests, and there's a lot of radiation that was in the area, and there are a family of cannibalistic freaks that are living in this desert, and they are looking and watching every single move that this American family make. And very soon they realize that they're in a lot of danger, and there's a terrifying event which results in a nighttime of survival as this cannibalistic family pick off this civilized family one by one. So that's as far as I go with the story. As I said with the Hills of Eyes remake, exactly the same story, but there are some differences, but not enough that are worthy of a inclusion in the synopsis. So that's your storyline. Now, this was the first Wes Craven film I had ever seen. Now, I watched The Last House on the Left a long time after, and you know, The Last House on the Left is definitely, the original is definitely a better film than The Hills of Eyes. It is a very tense atmosphere in the original of this film, very tense atmosphere, and I like the idea. It was an idea that could have been, you know, anything could have happened, because a great storyline, but it's a very basic storyline, which is good. It doesn't confuse things, and it just leaves, it is a suspense sort of film, and it doesn't need a solid storyline. Now, the family, we don't know too much about them, but we know enough about them to care about them. So that's what I liked about the film, is that we don't want to see horrible things happen, and when these cannibalistic family, when they start picking them off one by one, we want these guys to survive. So there was enough character development to care about these characters. So that's what I liked about the film. Now, the atmosphere, as I said, was very tense. It was a very good scenery. It was a very good, you know, a scenery for a good horror film in the middle of nowhere in a desert. So you don't know exactly where these freaks are, but you know that they're watching them. So there's a level of paranoia that goes into it as well. So once again, there's tense atmosphere, good story, and enough character development to get a sense of sympathy for the main characters, which brings another level of horror into it for me. Because there's nothing worse than having a family that you don't care about, you want to see killed, therefore there's not too much worry that's put into the film. So that were the good things about the film. I thought the acting was decent. Michael Berryman, who's on the front here, who's a weird looking bugger, he did a good job as one of the villains. But I will say that overall, the villains weren't menacing enough. Now, they were kind of the cannibalistic, but I thought they looked a little bit too clean. Now, they're dirty, but I would have liked them to see them dirtier, because I wanted to see them as mutated sort of freaks rather than just normal human beings. And that's what they came across as, normal human beings. And I thought they could have looked a bit menacing because they're not very big, and it looked as though some of them I could have taken out myself. So if I can take someone out, they're not very menacing. So I didn't like that about the film, and I also didn't like some of the dialogue and some of the sound effects. I thought were a little bit off and a little bit comic. Now, like The Last House on the Left, I thought it had some light-hearted sort of moments. The same with this film. I don't think Wes Craven did a great job at creating something that was truly horrifying. I don't think he really grabbed the true meaning of horror, and it's apparent in this sort of film and The Last House on the Left, because he could have made it a little bit more grittier. And he could have made the villains a little bit more, well, the villains in The Last House on the Left were good, but the villains in this film could have been a little bit more bigger, more menacing, and just a little bit dirtier in my opinion. But overall, it really wasn't a gory film at all. I was expecting a little bit more gore, considering what it said on the back. Some pretty barbaric things happen, but there is not enough of it to really qualify as a gory horror film. And I don't think there was a lot of suspense. There was suspense leading up to the moment that the cannibalistic family encounter this civilized family, but after that I thought the suspense levels kind of diminished after that. I thought it was half and half. The first half was a great build-up, but it was not a very rewarding ending. So overall, there is a lot to like about this film, but there is also a lot that you might not like about the film. So that's as far as I go with the review on the original. It could have been a lot better, but it was average, and it is a classic because it is the first of its kind, so I'll give it credit there, but I thought it could have been a lot better. Now we go to the remake. Now the remake is a very similar story, but it does have slight differences, but they're not important for the overall story. It is the same sort of story, and although I think that this film had a lot more suspense and it was a lot more brutal. Now the scene in the caravan, which also happens in the original, the scene in the caravan was almost, I almost couldn't take it. It was just that much suspense and that disturbing that I thought, it was a great scene and stands out as one of the best scenes in horror movies in recent history for me. Now, I thought the villains in this film were much better. They were mutated, they were freaky looking, and they were huge. So it had a really sort of menacing presence on screen. So it was the type of guys that you wouldn't want to run into. And you didn't find yourself kind of bored with this film. I thought the tension throughout the entire film was second to none. The gore was very, very good, as you would expect from Alexander Aja. And I thought everything about this film, this is one of the best remakes I've seen in a very, very long time. It stays true to the original, but it adds a bit more blood and guts, and I felt that Alexander Aja captured the meaning of horror better than Wes Craven did. Now, I know a lot of you are Wes Craven fans, so I apologise if I've angered you with my comments, but this is just my opinion. I just felt that Wes Craven misses the opportunity to make a masterpiece, whereas this isn't a masterpiece, but it's closer to it in my opinion. Now, Alexander Aja has since gone on to bigger and better things. He is a French director, so that probably explains why it's got a lot of gore in it, because French lately have put a lot of gore into it. The acting was very good, which was surprising. I wasn't expecting, for a movie like this, I wasn't expecting great acting, but it was very good acting. It had a big budget, so that helped it. And it stayed very true to the original, which I also liked. So this is basically the original with a bigger budget. And the atmosphere was great, the scenery was great, same sort of scenery as the original. and I just really like the fact that it didn't try and be its own film. It was paying respect to the original, but having its own sort of flavour onto it. So yeah, there's not a lot to criticize with this film. There's some really good gore scenes that will shock you. I thought the ending turned into a little bit of a Rambo style ending, but you know I'm not going to criticize that because it was entertaining, and although the realism kind of takes a back seat, yeah, it's just a film to really enjoy, and if you can call it enjoy. Now there's no, well, there is a scene where the mutants sort of molest someone. They wouldn't. Well, there is a rape scene, but it's nowhere near as bad as the last house on the left, or sorry, I spit on your grave. Sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second there. But there is really disturbing sort of sexual content, but it's not as disturbing as the previous two films that I had reviewed. So this one really does rely on excessive gore, and they pack the gore to the maximum in this film. So yeah, a very good remake, and it pays homage to the original, which is the best thing about it. So that's my review of both of the films. Now I'm pretty sure you know which one I'm going to pick for this one, and my verdict for the better film, in my opinion, is the remake. I just felt once again it had a lot more atmosphere and tension to it. Once again, I thought Wes Craven missed a chance to create a true masterpiece. You know, you may consider it a masterpiece, the original, but I don't. I felt that it was good, but it had the opportunity to be a great film, but it missed that opportunity because of the fact that Wes Craven couldn't keep the tension. But in this film, I felt that the tension was kept, which was really good, and it enhanced the experience, which I was grateful for. So this is a very worthy remake. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you go out and see it. It isn't as hard to watch as The Last House on the Left or I Spit on Your Grave, so you don't have to worry about that, but this is more of an insane sort of gore fest. So that's my review. That's my last part of this series. I'm sorry if I muddled up my words once again, but I'm trying to think off the top of my head, trying not to forget what I want to talk about, and therefore sometimes I can get muddled up. I need to learn how to speak better. So, yeah, that's it for my series. Thanks for supporting it. I might make another series in the future. I'm always looking to be creative. I might make a foreign versus Hollywood series soon, so look out for that one. So I hope you enjoyed these 3 videos, and until next time, I'll see you later.